Lovely. Okay, so usual starting routine, just to get into the swing of things, rubbing your hands together and then tapping over your face. And over your head and neck. And one shoulder. And side. And the upper part. Nice sort of loose feeling in your wrists as you do this. Down to your belly. And then finally, your legs. Sit back. Let your weight drop back. Breathing, relax. Just give yourself time to feel the change in your body as you lose some of that tightness, just the effect that that has on ribs, your shoulders. It's like you're breathing. There's no sort of rule about this, which way it should be done or what should happen. But just noticing that there is a change, and with the experience that you've got, also a sense of coming back to something that you sort of like forgotten about almost like you put an old pair of shoes on. They can feel comfortable because they've fitted themselves around your feet. Then you bring your feet in and go through the same process again, so that that awareness and the sensations associated with it and the physical changes associated with it become a kind of constant backdrop to everything that we do. And one of the things that we find, I think, is that memory, if you like to think of it like that, or that sense of sort of returning, like if you put on an old pair of shoes, it's like your feet relax into them and you kind of find the right place for your feet. And in the same way, when we have this idea that we know what we're looking for, we know where we're aiming to get to, and that kind of draws our body in. So you'll find that you start to make just quite automatically little postural adjustments and adjusting your weight, letting go in your hips, and just all sorts of things as part of this whole settling in process. And that's something, again, which will sustain itself through the different movements that we do, or some of them at least. And just starting, turn your head. And so we get this sense of movement within our body, a sense of the flow, the energy, however you care to think about it, gradually permeating the different parts of the body. So when we do the neck, of course, the big muscles, the neck and the upper back, shoulders, moving a little bit and encouraging that flow. And with that, a sense of, I think of as kind of harmonizing the flow. It becomes very smooth. And then to the shoulders. So this opening section is almost like a kind of guided tour of the body. And quite often we'll notice areas that feel stiff and tight. Shoulders and upper back in the colder weather, and the whole of your back in the colder weather can get quite stiff. So just notice that, be careful as you work with that. And then going forwards, as always, we're not forcing the movement, just encouraging the movement, cultivating the movement. And your hands out to your sides, so that rotation in your shoulders, the opening and closing in your chest. Winding around. And back the other way. Easing forwards and backwards. It's always going to be more tricky, I think, when we start to do the movements like this, the bigger movements, to maintain that harmonious flow within the body. And that's partly because any kind of change may cause a disruption in that flow. Partly because habits of movement that we've picked up over the years, habits of posture that we've picked up over the years, can actually cause to disrupt that flow a little bit. So with this one, for instance, very, very common, find ourselves straining, stiffening up a little bit, upper back, neck, shoulders, as we try and pull ourselves up. And you'll notice that, and that's a sort of reminder. Bring your attention to your feet. Use your feet and your legs, get that feeling of your hips dropping back. So the flow isn't something that we deliberately produce. We create the environment for the flow to take place in. But it doesn't make it unimportant. It's one of the primary goals, really, is this balancing of the energy. But also, when we don't feel that flow, it's a sort of hint that something in our posture, the way that we're moving, is starting to disrupt it. And then just turning. So the different exercises, and particularly the more tricky exercises, the more complex ones, the ones that you're less familiar with, perhaps, are actually quite a good kind of almost testing ground for our ability to maintain that harmonious flow. If we can do it with some of the more complex exercises, then it actually helps our ability to sustain it outside of the class. That's just experience. That's just something that happens over a period of time. Every now and then you'll notice something, maybe you get a piece of information, doing this with the leg, I want to do that, this is happening with the shoulder or whatever. But a lot of it is less clear than that. It's just, as I say, down to sensations, feelings, the body's natural responses to those. Going around. Even then, it's not a constant, because if you can't tweak the muscle in your back, you'll need to find a way to sort of move around that to ease it. So it changes from day to day. And then in the other direction. We also begin to realize the significance of our mind, our awareness as we do this. And recognize that we can actually change things. We're not stuck in one way of doing things. And then one leg. This ability for change is something that stays with us through our lives. It's sometimes said, saying that you can't teach an old dog new tricks or whatever. It's always assumed that it's only younger people can actually make those changes. Probably a bit easier when you're younger, because there's less conditioning to overcome. But it is demonstrably not true. The function of neuroplasticity, as it's now referred to, the ability of the nervous system to change, to adapt, is something that happens all through our lives. This is an established fact. The brain, the nervous system, the map of the brain and the nervous system are not fixed. They can change with the right circumstances. And as I say, that is true all the way through our lives. So, hands out to your sides. So we reprogram our bodies one way or another. The term neuroplasticity was coined when it was realized that people who'd survived a stroke, who maybe have lost the ability to write, or had some spasming or paralysis in an arm or something like that, one part of their body, were actually able to recover from that. And they realized that under certain circumstances, the brain can rewire itself. So if the stroke has affected a part of the brain or nervous system that governs that arm, you can effectively find an alternative route. And then change into fisherman cast a net. It's worth remembering that most people who have strokes, not all by any means, but the majority, are actually older people, over 50. So you can teach an old dog new tricks. Repetition is a key. Repetition of simple movements over and over again. We can eventually overcome old habits, conditioning of movement. We can train a part of our attention to sit more sort of comfortably in our body. With that, the quietness, the calmness that comes with that focusing of attention. And the exercises that we do become a kind of channel for that, become one of the medium that actually helps us to put that idea into regular practice. And then coming over the sun changed to pigeon spreads its wings. And then push it away, pushing a boat. Notice with this one, your hands start at the point in front of your hips. By the end of the movement, they come up slightly. And this pattern, if I just turn to the side, I do this with my arm. You can see it's a natural sort of smooth curve. I'm not having to push the arm out. My arm, I just have this position in the shape of the arm, and just let the movement push the hand up. It's like you're getting underneath something, like you're trying to help a friend climb over a fence and you get underneath them and give them a shove. And then the hands twisted. And turn your hands out. Bringing your hands in and push up. The word goes. And parting the ground. Do one more, and then what we'll do is we'll go back to the first rooting down and the little sequence of 3. Bring your hands in. As you bring your hand in, let your hips sink into the chair. Then feel the push back up, and your arms following, and then contracting down again. As your hands come out to the sides again, hips sinking down. Push up, down, and then going forwards. And as you come back this time, letting your hips sink down and then push up. We're exaggerating the movement slightly. It's a very subtle process. And starting all over again. So the sort of starting and finishing point for each stage of the sequence is this sinking down, kind of the punctuation, if you like. And it's often in those moments of settling, those points between movements, or between the stages of a movement, where just in that moment we feel the body settling again. You can just notice about a hip dropping or shoulder dropping or something like that. So they're a crucial part of the whole set. And this is as true for the changes between one part of an exercise and another as it is between one exercise and another. So this time, let your hands drop down, feel your hips dropping, feel your shoulders dropping, and then feel the push up on one side. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Let your hand come all the way down, fingers open, feel the weight of your arm on your shoulder. Move your attention across to the other side. Same thing. That switching your attention is itself quite a smooth process. It's not an abrupt change from one to the other, but more like you can imagine a camera panning across a landscape. You know, it like starts here and then the view comes across the center of the body to the other side. And all of this also helps with this just general sense of slowing down. And I think that's a really important quality that Tai Chi carries with it. One more time on each side. And then pushing in two directions, the body expanding, so the lengthening in your back. This happens, coming back again, that period of settling as your hands come in front of your hips. And then expanding sideways, not too far. I think this exercise illustrates really well the significance of that return in movement and it's not even a pause, just that sense of settling at this point here. Stillness within the movement. So this time I'm adding the turn. And in this or in other sequences of movements, it's quite easy just to forget where you are, what comes next. And the thing to do there, what I sometimes say to people is if you get lost in this exercise, come back to this position and we'll catch you up. This is, again, this is a space that is actually quite practical and helpful. Right, because it's very easy. You get to hear, oh God, I'm doing it wrong, and you start to panic about it, and the movement becomes frantic. And it's all linked in with this quality of stillness and the awareness that goes with that, the flow, the harmony. They're all different aspects of the same thing. We really need that period of settling. And with this one, of course, as with some of the other exercises, it also highlights that middle part of your body between hips and waist. That's a part of the body sometimes referred to as the lower dantian. Dantian meaning field of energy or field of elixir. So we expand out from that point and we draw back. Expand out and draw back. And last time, so now change into scooping the sea and looking at the sky. Moving forwards, or coming back in the opening in the front of your body. And here's that moment of settling here. And then we go forwards again. There are other places you may find it. So for instance, can happen. What might think of as the other end of the movement here, you just feel a bit of pressure from the heel of your foot, and so on and so forth. We get used to just becoming aware of these almost landmarks, reference points. And change into grasping the tiger's ears. One more time. And then switch sides. Scooping the sea and looking at the sky. And then grasping the tiger's ears. Remember, when your hips sink down, you can feel it a little bit in your feet and your legs as well. I refer to different parts of the body, but nothing is separate from everything else. So that area of the center, the lower down chin, sometimes feels as though it can extend down into our feet. And then bring the feet down. I mentioned neuroplasticity earlier. One of these studies done some time ago now, I think, on brain function and things like that was with London taxi drivers. And it was found that London taxi drivers had a bigger hippocampus, the area of the brain that stores information, bigger than the average human hippocampus, because they have to store so much information about streets and things like that. They subsequently found that if somebody stopped driving a taxi, the hippocampus would shrink again because there wasn't the same need. So it made me think about something that I read in a translation of a Chinese text on these exercises, where they were saying that they discovered that the nerve ganglia, the sort of junctions, I suppose you call them, the ganglia in the nervous system, that they detected changes in that area of the down chin in the nerve ganglia. And I have to say, at the time, I sort of dismissed it. It wasn't. They said there would be a study, but they didn't give details of it. So I thought it was a bit kind of dubious. But when I look back at that and thought, with the light of this Western discovery of neuroplasticity, it doesn't seem so unlikely. I don't know if it does happen. But what does happen, I think, is that we create our own routes, our own pathways. And so if you use exercises like, say, pushing in 4 directions, any of them really, to bring your attention back to the belly, the lower down chin, the feet and the legs, then the benefits we get from doing that, everything from improved posture and stability and mobility, through to that sort of quieter, more collected quality, become more accessible because we've constructed the pathways in the nervous system, amongst other things, maybe elsewhere in the body as well. It's like if you have a shed at the bottom of your garden and you go there every day, the path will remain fairly clear and accessible to you. If you haven't been down there for 6 months, the path will be overgrown and have stones sticking up and things and things like that. So a lot of the benefits in Tai Chi, those ones that are directly related to being more centered, more rooted, quieter, calmer, become more accessible to us with the practice, because we actually have a knowledge, if you like, a subconscious awareness of how to get there. The body knows, the body learns, and I think we've all experienced that. You can walk out the room that you're in and go and put the kettle on in your kitchen without having to think, right, I've got to turn left here and so on and so forth. But some people do, in some circumstances, lose those functions and get lost in their own home. Or if you're in a new place, you have to think, oh, which way do I go? Because you haven't walked that path quite so often. So there's a value to the repetition that spills over into our daily lives. Okay, let's do the archer. So folding your hands over your chest and pushing out with one hand, drawing the bow with the other, turning your head slightly to watch the hand as it goes away, and then coming across, feeling the opening across your back, and then on the other side. So we get better at noticing these things. And again, this is just natural for us. If you're interested in, well, I'm interested in birds, you notice them more, you get to know them better because you're watching them. If you're interested in flowers, you get to know them better, and so on and so forth. We build these skills, I suppose you could call them, into the body. So even though this one might not be directly related to being in your center and rooting down, that quality is there in the background, hopefully. But also we're training our attention to notice fine changes in the ribs, shoulder blades, all the muscles around that upper part of the body, as well as the sensations of movement and the opening and the closing, and the sense of the flow of the energy. There are lots of things we notice, how the body connects, how the movement is related to that subtle connection, pathways and movements through the body. There's a massive impact on how we move. One more time. And your hands drop down. Go forwards, turn a little bit. So turn to what would be your right. And as you turn, let your left hand swing out. Push up and back. Wind blows the willows. Go to the other side. It's not a big shift. And you can see my body's angling slightly as I do this, but not too much. Combination of our weight moving, center of our body turning, that center of the lower dantian again. The rhythm of the movement bringing us back to that center feeling. And also related to the rhythm of the movement, the sense of expansion and contraction. They're all elements of this movement combined. If it's comfortable this time, going to your right, pull the left heel up. A bit more weight there. It's quite tricky. Be careful you don't sort of, in doing that, lean out too far. Feel the support from the leg that you're moving into. And again, being careful of your back, being careful of your hips. If it suits you, you can start to just raise the foot a little bit. Dragonfly skims the water. Be particularly careful of your lower back. It's quite strong. Lower back, buttocks, that kind of area. These two exercises, the names, wind blows the willows, dragonfly skims the water, kind of hint at a warmer quality, don't they? Hot, balmy summers by the river or whatever. Kind of like that image. One more time. And then just rest for a moment. Okay. And rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. On the shoulder and your arm. The other side. Your chest again. Belly. And then your legs. My first teacher in Tai Chi, a woman called Bronwyn Hipkins, based here in Cambridge. I always remember she had a very practical approach to these arts. And I can always remember her saying that, you know, when we would go into this posture where we just bring the weight forwards, we let the hips drop back. And this, of course, is the center dropping down towards our feet, so we're back to an awareness of the lower dantian. But she always used to say to us that just you'll find yourself standing like this in supermarket queues. I can remember standing there, my legs shaking, thinking, why would I want to do that? Until one day I literally found myself in this long queue where just one of those situations, the machines were going wrong and people didn't have the right change and so on and so forth. And everybody was getting very agitated, as you know, we do in situations like that. And I just found myself settling in and felt the change, not just in my body, but in my mind as well, because we start to associate this with that quality of stillness and so on. And that's what part of what I mean by overcoming old habits. Our natural response to a stressful situation, it's an animal response, it's an adrenaline response, is to sort of get a bit uptight about it. Sometimes that may be appropriate, but in a lot of cases, it really isn't. It just adds to the stress of the situation. In Tai Chi, we retrain ourselves. A kind of first response is this settling in, and it doesn't necessarily take a long time. It only takes a moment. We just have that little space, and in that space is when we can have more choice, if you like, about how we respond. There's not a question of not responding to a situation, but rather, I suppose it's almost like we say, if you're going to get angry, count to 10 to let the anger go. It's that kind of idea. So just sinking down and pushing up. We become familiar with the physical qualities that are associated with that stillness, that space. And we become familiar with the idea that we're just going to touch that space on a regular basis. And then the wild goose. And then part in the clouds. One more time. Shake it. Okay, arm forwards, and then transferring your weight again, settling in, no hurry. And then raising your toes and your heel. And stepping in. Good. And on the other side. And then using your toes and your heel. And step in. So have your right foot forward. So again, mirror my movement so you can follow more easily. Let's do a few rounds of fisherman cast the net. Looking straight ahead. So your arms just simply swinging forwards and backwards, as we know. It's very straightforward exercise, this one. Now we're going to change to Wind Blows the Willows. The change is just as simple. You go back and then you turn to your right in the center of your body and your arms follow. The body expands and contracts. You go forwards and it's as you settle and you turn in the center of that body. And then if it's comfortable for you, you step. Either lift the foot or put it down, doesn't really matter. Good. On the other side. So again, starting, fisherman cast the net. And with that slight sort of settle in, pause in, feeling, remind yourself of how that feels. And then raising your toes and your heel. Sorry, no, getting ahead of myself. Go into your back foot. I should have said in turn. Expanding, contracting. You may even find that the turning in the center of your body makes it a little bit easier to move your foot. So you end up feel forced into this, but if it's comfortable, bring the foot in. Lovely. Go back to your chair. I think this aspect of Tai Chi, that stillness that we associate with the movement, the calmness, however you label it, really, is really important. I mean, we know that there's been some interesting work done on what's referred to as mindfulness, and I think in that sense, Tai Chi is very similar in some ways. But I was talking to somebody this morning. They've been having a very difficult time. They've been ill, been in and out of hospital. Never an easy situation at the best of times, but obviously at the moment that's very stressful. Suffering from anxiety and so on and so forth, feeling very isolated. And they said something that struck me quite deeply. That they said that they made the mistake of turning the television on this morning, and suddenly they're inundated with news and so on and so forth. We're getting it all the time, aren't we? The latest updates, sort of thing. And one of the things that I think that they're kind of not getting is that sense of space. Well, no wonder they're feeling anxious. No wonder these things are going wrong for them when there isn't that space in their lives. And I think that's something that is affecting all of us, really. It's there's this barrage, and has been for a year basically, of what's going on and stressful times and so on and so forth. And we know from the research that's been done on things like mindfulness and the effect of just taking a little bit of time out, very, very simple, very, very straightforward, but that can have a very, very positive effect on things like our mental health and our physical health, which is why it's becoming, it's been recognised, it's been used much more in the NHS in all sorts of contexts. Well, Tai Chi does the same thing, and this sort of refocusing of our attention, this drawing in of our attention to the body, to the sensations in our body, to our breath, and developing that so that there's not just the body, but specific parts of the body, specific aspects of the body's movement, and so on and so forth, can take us into a very quiet, calm space, which I think is, it's very important to us. And that, of course, is the sort of meaning, if you like, behind embrace tiger, return to mountain. You push your hands up. In this context, I think of embracing the tiger as just being like almost an acceptance or a recognition of what's going on in the world around us. We can do that, but we also return to the mountain. The mountain for me is this lovely image, sort of stillness and strength, interestingly enough. So, the saying in Tai Chi that we should be still as a mountain, but move like a great river. So we find this stillness within the movement. One more time. And rest. Lovely. The other thing that happens, of course, when in that stillness, is time goes very quickly. The hour seems to have shot by. So, but I hope that's been useful to you. Thank you very much, everybody. As always. Take care. If you do go out for a walk, obviously be careful on the slippery pavement.
Bye, everyone.
You can
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
That was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.